Okay, good evening, everybody, and here we go. As I normally do, we start the share with something that happened, something that's connected to Ishtadlos, and this time is actually it's different because what I'm about to share and the story I'm about to say is not necessarily something that I thought was a Hishtadlos story per se, or a Bitachon story per se, but it's actually something that I have experienced, and I didn't think of it in a way of Ishtadlos, and only afterwards when I was discussing with my Chavrusa, one of the Rabbanim here in town, he gave me the angle of Bitachon. So it's interesting that although we do this every week, and I sometimes think that I'm well in tuned, I guess I wasn't. And the story was like this. It was a story that I actually didn't feel as comfortable with. I love it when we have learners that are outside of South Africa, and they always ask me about certain things like, what are you talking about? So we're going to talk about something that you guys don't know. Only South Africans have the privilege of an exclusive experience, load shedding. So this is actually not load shedding. It's actually something else. I don't know if it's stealing cables or just a mistake or I don't know. Something happened to the electricity. And last Thursday, we lost our electricity Thursday afternoon. And we didn't get it back till very close to Shabbos. Now, a lot of people that are on our grid only got it on Shabbos afternoon. Some got it on on Monday afterwards. Today, some got Sunday. Not all of us got it on Erev Shabbos. We did get back earlier than other people. And the story, and this is what happened. Thursday, no electricity. Friday, no electricity. It's getting close to Shabbos. It's getting frustrating. And although Baruch Hashem, our neighbors had, and a few other people, and they gave us a bit of electricity, but it was hectic. And then one of my kids says, enough is enough. We can't do this. We're too stressed out without electricity. I don't know if I should say in Shiri, maybe even said, Tadi's too stressed out without electricity. We need electricity. We're going to force Hashem to give us electricity. Now, I didn't even know about it, but this child of mine speaks to the other children, and he says, listen, we learned in Parshas Vayeschanan that Moshe Rabbeinu davened 515 tefillos, or 16, communion Vayeschanan, because, and Hashem told him, stop, because if you do one more, Hashem will have no choice but to be forced to let Moshe come into Eretz Yisrael. So they split it up, and they did together 516, and they said, we're going to get the exact amount, and we're going to force Hashem to give us electricity. And that was their plan. They all sit down in the living room, each one takes his part, consistently for some time. I'm not talking about 3 minutes after they're done. The minute they were done, like within a minute after they were done, electricity was back. It literally worked. And they were all proud. They came, we forced Hashem to give us electricity for Shabbos. So when I heard about it, A, I was very proud. B, I didn't like the story. I felt very uncomfortable with this story, with this whole concept. For one, we always speak in our house and we always try to live a way that what Hashem decided for us is what's good for us. It's our Ishtadlos. It was extremely easy because with this time we lost electricity. Half our neighbors had electricity, so we were able to see that it's for us. And I was like, if that's what Hashem had in mind for us, then we should respect it and live with it. That's number one. Number two, the concept of forcing Hashem, it just doesn't sit right with me. And especially the concept of them feeling that they can do it. I don't know if it's always going to work. I don't know if it's always going to be with full ishtadlos. And it was just an uncomfortable feeling, and I was debating what to do. So the other day, I learned, actually not the other day, this morning, I learned with my chavrusa, one of the Rabbanim here in town, and after we finished learning, I said, do you have a minute? He said, yeah, and I told him the story, and I said, what do you say about this? How do I approach it? And he said to me, listen, I don't think necessarily that your kids forced HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He said, Moshe Rabbeinu could do it. I don't know that we can do it. Maybe. I don't know. Definitely not that we're going to always have the full ishtadlus for all these times. But I do know one thing. First of all, your kids, Tinoikos Shabbos Rabban, they were davening. You get a lot from it. And the second thing he says, listen, once your kids decided that they're going to daven 516 times and stop, which means they also draw their line of ishtadlus. And that's what he approached me with. And he said, once they've reached the line of ishtadlus, then now electricity can come because they did their part. And we spoke about it, the concept that tefillah is a natural way of ishtadlus. It's something we don't talk a lot about a lot, but I think we should. One of the famous questions we have, we know that part of the reason that the Imois, there's a few reasons brought down. One of the reasons the Imois were they couldn't have children. Obviously, the Imois couldn't have children. So Chazal tell us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu mis'ave letfilosom shel tzadikim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu craves the davening of tzadikim, so he made them not have kids, so they can daven and then have kids. And one of the famous questions on that is, having kids is a very natural thing. How does it make sense? Or I don't even want to use the word, is it fair? But let's say everything he does is fair. But how does it work that because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is craving their davening, he took away their natural ability to have kids, which is a natural thing in this world. And the one thing that I've heard from a few of my rabbis, they always came back to the same concept. They said, listen, Hashem would never take away a natural ability from somebody if it's not replaced with a natural ability, which means tefillah, davening, is a natural ability, which means tefillah is a natural way of achieving things. It's not necessarily that it's a segula or it's only a plea to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts davening in this world in a way that it works in a natural way. And that's why it also answers the famous question about Moshe Rabbeinu, which we started with. Moshe Rabbeinu, Hashem tells him, don't do one more because I have no choice. No, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need to listen. Well, what do you mean I have no choice? Which means that in a way Hashem tells him that tefillah is a natural power. So if tefillah is a natural power, that's what the Imois had instead. It was a natural power. It was their own thing. And therefore, my Chovos tells me today, he says very simple. He says, if your kids, this is the amount of ishtadlus they decided to put in to get electricity, that was their full ishtadlus. And as soon as they were done the ishtadlus, the electricity came in, which was another angle that I haven't thought about. I actually thought this example is not related to the Shaar. And then you see from another way, which means it keeps on coming back to the point that when somebody puts in his ishtadlus, then once he's done his ishtadlus, it moves on. It happens. He doesn't need to put in more. Now, a person could say, but how do I know that I put in enough? If you're not certain you put in enough, you probably didn't. Only when you feel like, okay, I've done my part, and it's clear to you, and you're not planning to continue because you've done your part, then you're done your ishtadlus. I was speaking to somebody from the Shaar the other day, and I said, it can't be like a negotiation. You're trying to sell, I'm trying to buy. I say 100, you say 200, I say 110, you say 190, whatever. It's not that our ishtadlus with Hashem is okay. I'll say this amount of tefillas, did it work? No. Okay, I'll offer some more. That's not called I did my ishtadlus. My ishtadlus is when I completed my offer, I completed what I feel is right and that I can do, according to what we've learned of how much. And now I'm stopping. Now I'm letting go. Then it will come in and happen. We'll do the rest because you've done your part, unless you're not supposed to have it. That's another topic. Okay, so that was just my comment of the week. The other thing I wanted to mention, and this is something that we've spoke about a lot, and just because we're ending off the concept of, in the Hakdama, we're ending off the concept of how beautiful a person could live his life without stress and without fear by trusting Hashem, we have to understand there's another angle to it that I just want to touch on. When we're consistently living the future, then we don't necessarily understand that we have done our ishtadlus, which means many times we look at certain events that happen, we look at certain actions that are taken, and we say, okay, so what does this mean about tomorrow? Is this a good sign for my offer that's going to happen next month? Is this leading to something good? And we take away the focus from actually, is what happened now a good thing? So for instance, let's say somebody has a product he's trying to sell, and he had a good day, he sold 20 pieces of his thing, whatever it is. Many times, 20 is not a lot, it's nice, but it's not what he can live off, but it's a good thing. So many times he'll tell himself, oh, I sold 20 today, it's a good reason to be optimistic for the future. It's a good concept for later on. And I said, that's not really understanding the concept of ishtadlus. It's, in a way, you need to enjoy your moment and say, today Hashem gave me a reasonable business deal. Yes, I can't live off forever selling these amounts, but my business is going to have to grow. I agree. Fine, it's going to have to grow. But don't take the success of today, and instead of saying to Hashem, thank you for what happened today, and realizing you've done your ishtadlus, saying, well, what is this indicating for the future? It's not about the future necessarily. It's about now. You're on a good path. Enjoy the way. Enjoy the steps that you're taking. And another angle to the same thing is when sometimes we have a situation that we're short of money or we're concerned about the business. So we start, and many times what will happen is we'll start panicking. And right away we'll say, okay, so we're stopping this and we're stopping that, we're changing this and we're changing that. And I said, 1 second. If you need to do your ishtadlus, look at it in a professional way, which means we spoke about it that a person in this world, he's almost like you're running a Kodesh Baruch Hu's budget. So you need to do it properly, but you don't need to panic. You don't need to say, okay, I'll make a decision right now because of what happened and I'm nervous and I'm impulsive, instead of waiting another day or two. Because really, most decisions, the effect is not immediately. You need to make a decision, and you need to make a decision properly. But if you make it the moment you heard about the challenge, or if you made it the next day, the only difference is that you're able to calm down and relax in between. You don't have to make a decision that second. Yes, there are times. And when I speak about this many times, people say, yeah, but there's a certain time that if you don't make a decision that second, I'm not talking about those times. I'm not talking about a time that you need to make a decision for that second. I'm talking about normal situations that it doesn't make a difference if it's now or tomorrow, or you thought of it. Just 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so just what I'm saying is that if we're running a budget through what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us to run our budget, think about it that you're running a budget for a company. If you hear bad news about the company, something that needs to make hard decisions, most likely if it's in the evening, you'll say, okay, fine, tomorrow I'll get to the office and I'll deal with it. You don't necessarily need to deal with it impulsively. And that, a lot of it is also how we need to deal with our own budgets. If it's not a situation that needs to be decided this moment, then make a decision tomorrow at working time. Why do it when you're stressed? Why do it when you're nervous? Why try to control? And more than that, sometimes by actually waiting, and coming. I'm not saying about delaying. I'm saying if somebody says, so I won't do anything. No, you got to do something. You got to take responsibility. But sometimes by giving it the time you need, if it's a few hours, if it's a day, if it's 2 days, you have time to relax. You have time to consult. You have time to think. You don't have to be impulsive over it right away. You're able to deal with it in a proper way. Okay, so now that we put that aside, we can start discussing the level that we are. We're actually starting to go into the actual prokim of Chovos Halevavos. And he says like this, there's going to be discussing 7 things. One is what is Bitachon. We speak about it a lot, that we need to trust Hashem. But what is the definition of it? What is the thing that we need to do? The one thing in trusting Hashem. So, what is the trust? Obviously, we know that Bitachon has a level that's got to be also, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in a natural way, which means we have to live in a natural way. A person can't say, I'll eat poison, I'll eat cyanide, and I'll have Bitachon. That's not Bitachon. So what is Bitachon? We'll get to that. The second thing is the reasons. What the reasons that will give a person a reason to trust Hashem. What are the reasons? Later on, he's going to give a whole list. Sorry, just got a comment to mute. Okay, so what is the bitachon in the level, right? So we say, as we said here, what is a bitachon that a person needs to do in order to what's it called? In order to trust Hashem? What are the, I don't want to say what are the qualities of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's the reason we trust him, but in a way he does bring a list of why it makes sense to trust Hashem. We'll get to that, and we'll see how it resonates very well. The third is why a person has obligation to trust Hashem, together with what is our chiyuv of ishtadlus, what is the chiyuv we need to do for Parnassa. The fourth one, what are the things that a person will be praised for, which is the right step to do, and in the extreme of bitachon, and what are the things that it's too extreme and it's wrong, as we said. The fifth is the difference of the lifestyle and difference of the way of running your business, and if a person is trusting Hashem and if he's not, which means the responsibility a person has, the boundaries a person has. We'll see the difference, how it happens in work, and also the difference of the Shaar. If a person is working because that's his chiyuv of ishtadlus, so every minute that he goes to work, he's doing a mitzvah. So if imagine somebody, for his parnassa, he has to travel, let's say. He goes to a different city. Now, if he's doing his work because he needs to do his ishtadlus for parnassa, so every moment of the travel, even when he's at night in his hotel or his guest or whatever it is, he's getting a mitzvah every moment because that's part of his ishtadlus of work. So if somebody has a ishtadlus of work and he works from home, okay, there's times he's working, he gets Shaar for the ishtadlus. He's not working, he's not. Somebody's traveling, the time he's traveling is part of the Shaar that because that's what he's doing for his bitachon, for his ishtadlus. So we'll get to that and see that if a person is doing business just for money, not because of ishtadlus, then he's not getting a Shaar for it. But if a person is going to work because that's his obligation and that's what Hashem tells him to, he gets Shaar for every moment of what he does. And the sixth thing he says, people that say, okay, I'm going to first work, make big money, and then I'll settle down and serve Hashem properly, then I'll settle down and do what Hashem expects me to. It's not the way to do business with Hashem, first of all. It's like getting your profit before your work. We'll get into it properly later, but we'll see how much of it a person should go work. And by the way, somebody once asked me the other way around. He says he was wondering. He said a person who was working and he got a nice Yerusha. But he liked his business. But according to his Yerusha that he got, he could live comfortably for the rest of his life. So he wanted to know if he's allowed to continue working. He says, because if I have enough money for the rest of my life, naturally, then am I allowed to learn, or it's just to work, or it's just Bittul Torah? But we're not going to go into that discussion now. But just as a concept, there is such a concept. If you have enough money, should you be working or not? But hopefully I give everybody a bracha. That should be your challenge. So one day you'll come and say, listen, I have too much money. I have enough money for the rest of my life. Should I be working or not? Okay, but not the topic. And the seventh one, he says, is what we need to know for bitachon, which means what can happen to a person by losing his bitachon, and what a person needs to know in order to keep the different aspects, because we'll see that bitachon has many different levels, aspects, concepts that we'll have to go through and see what are they that we need to keep them. Okay, I'm just going to go, I went through it quite quickly because all the next prakim were very clear, and we're going to go into details, so it went a bit quicker. Okay. So he says the first thing, Achmauta Bitachon, the first thing is, what is Bitachon? This, he says, is something very simple, and we've already learned it. Mahuta Bitachon hi menuchat nefesh. והבוטח, שיהיה ליבו סמוך על מי שבטח עליו, שיעשה הטוב והנכון לו בעניין אשר יבטח עליו. Which means, the first basic concept of bitachon is not what we naturally think. I trust Hashem, He'll give me all what I want, all what I desire. I trust Hashem that He's gonna have all my needs are gonna get there. Because the concept of the bitachon is to trust the person you're trusting, which is that person, the Kodesh Baruch Hu, that will do the good and the right thing for me and what I trust him for. Which means there's a few parts to it. If you come and trust somebody, let's say, and I'm going to use the concept of somebody because later on Chovos Halevavos as well uses the concept of somebody, not Hashem necessarily. So when you come and trust somebody, and you have to have a few elements in order to trust in that person. Number one, you need to be certain that the person wants to do what's best for you. If you want to trust them, because you won't trust somebody that not necessarily is interested in doing good for you. So the first concept of bitachon is to trust that Hashem wants to do good for me. But the second thing is, you also got to trust his judgment. Because let's say you have somebody that you trust, human being, that he only has your best interest in mind. However, you don't trust his judgment. So if you don't trust his judgment, the fact that he wants to do good for you doesn't change the reality that it's not necessarily good for you what he's doing. Because he's got to have number one, he's got to have the will to do the right thing, but he's also I got to trust him that his decisions are the right decisions. We say every day, by Moedim, we say, Hatoiv ki lo yecholu rachamecha. We say, the good, Hashem, the good, that your mercy never ends. V'hamerachem, and who has mercy on us, ki lo yetamu chasadecha. The good, the merit, the chesed, the good things you do for us never end. And the simple way to write it in Hebrew grammar would be the other way around. It should be Hatoiv ki lo yetamu chasadecha, the good that your chesed is endless. V'hamerachem ki lo yecholu rachamecha, and the who has mercy, that your mercy is endless. Why is it Hatoiv ki lo yecholu rachamecha v'hamerachem ki lo yetamu chasadecha? And the answer is very simple. Many times, if we do something because we have mercy for somebody, we won't necessarily do what's good for him. Same time, if we do what's good for him, what's right for him, it's not necessarily the most kind, full of mercy thing. We, as we all know, we give our children sometimes medicine if they need it, medication. Not necessarily they enjoy it. It tastes bad. Definitely don't enjoy when we force them to go to school and do homework and do work at home, but it's the right thing for them. It's not because we have mercy for them. Sometimes we will give a child a sweet because we have mercy for him, but it's not the good thing for him. He doesn't need that sugar now. It's bad for him. So we see that we have a combination. We have things that are the good things. We have things that are full of mercy. And only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can get to this level of doing good with endless mercy and having mercy with endless good. That's not something a human can do. We always have this question of, am I doing the right thing, or am I doing the things that I feel bad for the person? Right? Sorry, one second. Sorry about that today. Okay. So we have this concept. So anyways, so you need to trust Hashem. If you want to have Bitachon in Hashem, you need A, to trust that Hashem has your best interest in mind, and B, that he knows what's the best thing for you. Now, I know saying it in a shiur sounds very silly almost, because of course we trust Hashem, and of course we know Hashem has our best interest and our best judgment. But sometimes in real life, if we think about it, we could say, Hashem, I need this business to work. I need this thing to happen. Not necessarily that that's the right thing, but we feel that Hashem needs to give us this. Okay? So the concept is that once you have these two foundations of bitachon, if you didn't get what you wanted, it doesn't take away from your trust, because you didn't get it, but you still know two things. You know, A, you trust Hashem that He has your best interest, and B, He knows what's good for you. So if He didn't give it to you, that means it's not your best interest. It's very simple. But if we find that sometimes if we don't get what Hashem gives us, it takes away from our Habitachon, that means that we don't really trust His judgment. Because here now his judgment was that we shouldn't get, and we're not so excited and confident. So it has to be that if the person doesn't get what he wants, it doesn't take away from his bitachon, because that's the only way to be clear that you trust Hashem's judgment and you trust that He has your best interest. Okay, so we see that be'etzem we trust Hashem. Okay, we have time. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give you the best that you want, even if you didn't commit to it. And we have to understand in that one of the most touching moments in Israel history that I remember. I mean, I like to say about myself, in the history that I remember makes me feel old, but in the short history that I remember, tremendous tragedy in Eretz Israel. A young soldier was kidnapped, and his name was Nachshon Waxman, Hashem Yikom Demo. I'm sure anybody who was in Israel at the time knows. A lot of us that weren't in Israel at the time probably know the story. But anyways, he was kidnapped, and there was the whole country literally was davening for him. I think at the time they said that his mom came out right before Shabbos, asked all the women to light candles. They said there was about 1 million women in Israel that lit candle that Shabbos, which was big numbers. I remember the daven at the Koisel, you couldn't get close to the old city. There was people through the whole area davening. At that time, Rabbi Zalman Auerbach was very sick, and I remember at the time noticing that the tefillas for Nachshon Waxman were way more advanced in the amount of people. Everybody was there, everybody was there to daven for him. And to make a long story short, The tefillas, unfortunately, did not bring him back alive, and he was killed that Mitzvah Shabbat, that Friday night. And it was a big question, what's going to happen now? And people were saying, though, everybody was davening, everybody was trying, everybody was begging. At the funeral, his father, Nachshon Wachsman, he was just nifter a few months ago, actually. Yehuda Wachsman, his name was. He was going to speak, but he couldn't. He literally felt he couldn't talk at his son's levaya. But he wrote on a letter. He wrote a few words, and Nachshon's Rosh Yeshiva spoke. And his words were very short. His words were, many people are wondering, how could it be that with all the tefillahs we did for my son, Hashem ignored us? And he said, I'm here telling you that Hashem did not ignore us. Hashem's our father, and the father is allowed to say no sometimes. Why Hashem told us no, I don't know. What's the reason? No idea. Is it painful? Yes. Is it terrible? Yes. However, Hashem heard the tefillahs, took it in consideration, he heard us, and he answered no. That can come only from a person who has these two concepts, that whatever Hashem decides, A, he does for the best, and B, he does have the right judgment to know what the best is. So if he has the right judgment and we can trust that he does the best thing for us, then we know that everything's going to be in place, and everything is the right thing. Anything he does. Okay, so now that was the first chapter. I went quickly because it's things that we've seen, and it's we've gone through these concepts. The second chapter is he brings that there are 7 things that will make a person trust somebody else. He actually starts off with, if you would trust a human, what are the 7 things that you need? And it's very interesting how he does this foundation. What is the 7 things that you need in a person to trust them? It's very important because actually when I do counseling with couples and I speak, a lot of times you could see a challenge in Shalom Bayis when one of the spouses doesn't feel trust in the other one. And seeing these 7 points of how to build trust is amazing. But what would be, yes, he brings it here for Shaar Habitachon, trusting in Hashem, but he starts with how to trust somebody else. Many times for a wife to trust her husband, these are very important steps to see. I'm not going to focus on it, and we're not going to go through the whole 7 now, and I'm not going to keep on going back to remember also for Shalom Bayis, but I'm just saying, have it in mind. So the first one out of the 7, that are 7 steps of foundation to trust somebody. Okay, so achasmen, horachamim v'achemlo v'ava. The person, in order to trust somebody else, you need to feel that the other person has for you mercy, caring, and love. Okay, if a person loves you, cares, and feels bad for you, basically wants for you to have the best, you could trust them. And not only that, you're not concerned to bother him and to get his help. Sometimes if you're going to go get help from somebody, if you don't know that that person likes you, you don't know that person loves you, you don't know that person has a warm place in his heart for you, you're not comfortable even getting anything from him. We could see that the simple way, children are very happy to get things from their parents because they don't question the fact that their parents feel for them, they have mercy on them, and they love them. Yes, when they become teenagers, they remind their parents 15 times a day, you don't love me, you don't care, you're not interested. But that's not true. They know inside very strongly that they do. And that's why they feel comfortable getting from them, right? If you would get something, a gift or a present from somebody that you know doesn't like you, you wouldn't want it. If somebody says, fine, take it. You're asking for something and he says, fine, take it. You don't want it. No, don't give it to me. Not interested. Which means in order to receive from somebody and to be able to even be assisted by him and to be even able to get help from him, you need to know that he has a warm place in his heart for you. He loves you. He likes you. He cares for you. Otherwise, you're not interested. So the first step of Bitachon, out of the 7 here, he says, if you want to trust somebody, you want to trust anybody, and we're talking first about a human, you got to know that it's coming from a place of interest. They really like you. They want to help you. And it's not that they're doing you a big favor. We actually get full of resentment and upset. If somebody comes and says, fine, I'll do you a favor, take. Many times we'll say, no, not interested. Our guy won't let us even take anything from him. Not interested. The second thing, that he knows, the second point is that, okay, I know that person loves me, but I need to know with that love also, Hasheni, the second one, not only that he loves me, he's actually being active about it. He's not being lazy about it. He's not being, okay, I love him and I wish I could help, but it means that I need to go get off my chair and do something and I don't feel like it. That's not the type. I won't trust somebody who doesn't actually do things. I always used to laugh. If we go back to Shalom Bayis, he used to laugh and say that if your husband told you he's going to change a light bulb in the room, he will. You don't have to remind him every half a year, right? But in order to trust somebody, if you're going to trust somebody, then you need to know that not only that he feels for you, he's actually going to do something about it. So he's interested in doing, but he's also going to do something. And he agrees to do, and he makes it happen. Because if you have somebody that you love and loves you, but you know that he's, I don't want to use the word lazy, but he's not so active, or he's not going to make an extra effort. Yes, he loves you. He's willing to help if it's not a big deal. But if it means to go far away, I don't know why I keep on going to this, but they say that sometimes the husband could tell his wife, whatever you want, I'll bring you the moon if I need, or I'll bring you, I'll go across the ocean for you, whatever. And then she says, okay, do you mind going to Pick and Pay, get me some bread? He's like, everything I have to do. But the concept is that if you can trust somebody, that he's there and he's interested and he will make it happen, and you can trust him, then you will. So the second thing is, as we said, there's the first 2 steps. Number 1, that person loves you and he's interested in helping. And number 2, that he actually does it. He's not going to just push it off. He's not being lazy. He's not getting frustrated with the work. He's there, he's keen, he's interested, and he's doing it. So that's the second thing. What are we doing time-wise? We have a bit more, 2 more minutes. Let's see. The third thing is that not only that he wants to, and he does, is that he has the ability. Because if you tell him, go get me something, and he says, fine, and he goes to get it, but physically he can't pick it up, then you can't trust him. Right? So if your 2-year-old tells you, Abba, I love you so much, I want to go do something, and you say, fine, go get me my ladder. And he says, fine, and he runs to the ladder and he can't move it. You're not going to trust him that I'll bring you the ladder, because he can't. So the third thing he says, in order to trust somebody, it's got to be a basic ability that he can actually do it physically and financially, which means if you want to trust him, you want to know that you say, okay, I trust him that he's going to support me when I need, but he's got to have the ability. I trust him, he's going to help me with this. He's got to have that ability. Because even if he loves you and he's not lazy, But if he doesn't have the physical or financial or emotional strength or whatever it is, you can't trust him because you need somebody who can actually do it. Okay, so we see that the first three steps, and this is what I think we're going to stop after the third and we can continue next week, please God. But the first three steps in order to build trust with anybody, afterwards we'll see how it applies to Hashem, but the basic of trust is Bitachon. The basic of trust is to know that he loves me and he cares. He will do what needs to happen. He won't just let it go. And the third thing is very simple, that he can. Because if he can't, then I won't trust him. So those are the first three steps that we see of how to be able to have bitachon and trust in someone. Okay, so as we go on, we're going to discuss, as I said, the 7 steps. So basically we saw today these concepts. Number 1, we started off with the concept of trusting in Hashem in a level of not being extra stressed, understanding that I can do something, it doesn't have to happen this moment, this second. I could think about it. And then we spoke about the first level of Bitachon is that if somebody can trust somebody, is that he can trust, you need to trust. The first paragraph was the 2 parts. Number 1, that the person so if somebody is interested in doing the best, and number 1, and number 2, that he knows what the best is. That was the first part. The second part is the starting seeing the levels of building trust. So we saw number 1, the 3 things, that the person cares, that he will do it, and that he has the ability to do it. And then we'll be able to continue Be'ez Hashem. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, please God, next week, 8:15 South African time, and we will be in touch. Have a good week. Good Shabbos.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
Shabbat tov.
Bye.